disparity between the number of infections found in Iran versus the rest of the world, we can be positive that Iran was the prime target of this attack. About India and Indonesia, well, that is very likely, but it is not as easy to say, because as Stuxnet is a worm rather than a Trojan, the big difference is worms self-replicate on their own, while a Trojan doesn't. So what may well have happened is if somebody got infected in, let's say, Iran, and used their infected laptop to go to Indonesia, then the Stuxnet would be spreading there as well. So it's really hard to say who the actual target is. But again, there is a big disparity between Iran and Indonesia and India. So Iran is definitely the prime target. So let's compare Stuxnet, the current operation, versus Aurora. And what is really interesting to note here is that Aurora 2 had a 0-day, so an unpatched vulnerability, which the bad guys used to infect these Fortune 500 companies. But the big difference here is that the vulnerability that Aurora was exploiting was against Internet Explorer 6. And nobody should have been running Internet Explorer 6 in 2008, let alone at the end of 2009. So the mitigation against this vulnerability was really easy. Finally get your act together and upgrade. But with Stuxnet, the story was totally different. All of a sudden, we are faced with a vulnerability or exploit which is really easy to exploit. You can get hit with it when surfing the web. The attackers can potentially crash something for email. And it works against any version of Windows since Windows 2000. So that's way up to Windows 7 and also Windows 2008 on the server side. So, and the mitigation for that it wasn't really that great. The only real mitigation that Microsoft was offering against this particular vulnerability was to disable all your icons. And yeah, not a whole lot of people like to do that. So that didn't really work. And what also sets apart the sophistication and the organization, I guess, is the fact that the two companies that were targeted, Realtek and Gemicron, in terms of the certificates, they are located in the exact same business park in Taiwan. So that all of a sudden makes it very plausible that there was something of a physical attack vector. Maybe somebody left a USB stick in the office. Perhaps it was the cleaning crew. So thinking about that kind of stuff, Aurora, as Stefan pointed out, really brought up the issue of targeted attacks to a somewhat general public. But now, Stefan showed a version of our Earth's Aurora. This is a version of Jupiter's Aurora, which is way bigger. So the implications that Stuxnet has is much bigger, because all of a sudden, like with Aurora, we weren't necessarily thinking about physical security all that much. How many people here can be sure that their machines don't get compromised if the cleaning crew comes by? And so really more awareness, as it were. Finally, Aurora was a Trojan, so we know that whomever got infected with Aurora was an actual target. With Stuxnet, this is not the case, because it's a worm and could go all over the world. So that does make it rather difficult to pinpoint exactly who was the target. But then again, Stuxnet has to be a worm, because otherwise it cannot get to the SCADA systems. Anyway, closing thoughts on Stuxnet. This is without any doubt the most sophisticated and most importantly, most organized targeted attack we have seen to date. And I guess I should also add is that this is a public. I'm sure that there have been many more attacks against SCADA networks. They just never made it to the public. So, and that is exactly the same thing that was the case for Aurora. Given all these factors, the fact that it's targeting SCADA networks, the plausibility of physical attacks in Japan to obtain the certificates, the geographic distribution, and the use of a 0-day, we really think that the involvement of nation state is the most likely because it seems too complex, too well organized to just be a competitive intelligence kind of thing. The Stuxnet botnet has also been synced, which means that the botnet has basically been neutralized. Machines can still be infected, but the data that would be sent off to the drop zone will never actually get there. So that's good. We are still investigating some aspects of Stuxnet, and I think in the next couple of weeks we'll have some more interesting details on it. So looking at the bigger picture, I'm convinced that Stuxnet is not going to become a mainstream kind of malware attack. For that is just simply too well orchestrated, too well organized. So this is going to be the exception. And similar attacks are likely going to slip under the radar. If you think about using these certificates, very targeted, it's very unlikely that we'll be able to detect it proactively. And that's a problem. But as Stefan was saying, a determined detector will get in. Stuxnet also led me to research the way that Windows deals with these certificates and these signed files. And we actually found that the implementation of how Windows deals with signed files is very poor, very suboptimal. What Windows will do, it will tell you when the certificate, when all is well with the certificate. However, Windows will tell you nothing, absolutely nothing, if something is wrong with the certificate. And that seems to be, well, that just isn't right. You cannot build in a system which just tells you, okay, this is good, and doesn't tell you when something is bad. Actually, we saw some new malware, actually yesterday, which was trying to pretend that it was coming from us, from Kaspersky Lab. And the certificate was completely false, completely. If you looked at the details of the certificate, you could see this certificate doesn't make any sense. So Windows knows that the certificate is wrong, it's invalid, yet it doesn't inform the user. So I think that for Microsoft, it would be very easy to simply make some adjustments and basically stop this kind of malware in its tracks. Okay, thank you. Brian?